Thank you. Thank you. First order of business, if you have any drinks, juice, water, etc., please keep it on the other side of the resource tables. We do not want anyone to slip and fall and hurt themselves. All right. First, I would like to bring to the microphone to give welcome Reverend Brian Bellamy. Make some noise.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Good evening, everyone. I'm Reverend Dr. Brian Bellamy. I'm senior pastor of Mount Calvary Baptist Church. I also serve as chair of the Advisory Commission on Policing for Montgomery County. And I am here tonight to welcome you. You are standing or sitting on holy ground. We are in the Lincoln Park community, which is one of the 40 original communities in this county where African Americans could purchase a home. This church was founded by former slaves and their children 122 years ago. And ever since that time, we have worked hard to represent Christ to the community in word and action and in service. And so we are very proud to host this event tonight. It is our prayer that you feel welcome and that we will have a very robust and productive discussion. You are welcome tonight, and on any given Sunday at 11 a.m., you are welcome to join us for Sunday morning service. The church that is here, say amen. All right, we turn the remainder of this event over to Mr. Hawkins. God bless you and welcome.
All right. Thank you. We're going to do a little housekeeping. First, we have some guests, some special guests in the building. All right. It's a kind of a long list, so just bear with me. But we are all here to support the community. First, I want to say that throughout history, community has been our capital. And if you look around, you see how beautiful we are, how rich we are. So that's something to be proud of in this moment. This is a beautiful moment. All right. So the special guests, and forgive me if I miss someone, but we have Jeru Bande, the director of East County, the mayor of East County. We got Ruben Rosario. There's the brother. Wave your hand and stand. All right. We have Sean Ellis, the interim director of OCP. Tiffany Ward, the director of racial equity. She gonna correct you if you're wrong, boy, I tell you. We have Jennifer Bryant, the director of OMB. Wait, there she go, right there in the back. And I'll speed it up. James Bridgers, Dr. James Bridgers. Excuse me. Chris Conklin, the director of transportation. Eric Friedman, Barry Hudson, Corey Smedley, Darcel Graham, the Honorable James Stowe, director of Office of Human Rights Commission. Raphael Murphy, Ramona Pearson, Darren Frankie. All right, thank you. I told you she would correct me if I ever got something wrong. And then we also have some officials in the building. We have Greg Wims. Where's the brother? All right. We have Shebra Evans. There we go. Make some noise. Yeah. We have a rep from Council Member Sales Office. Where's Council the rep? There she go. She introduced herself earlier. And we also have a representative from the Office of Procurement. Yeah, go on, make some noise. Yes. Now, is there any other officials that we're missing? What'd you say? Isola Shaw. Make some noise for Isola Shaw. I'm so sorry. All right, last thing. How can I forget that? Dr. Keisha Davis. My apologies. Greatest apologies. Y'all pointing. I said him. Representing Council Member Gabe Albanov. All right, all right, all right. Okay, okay. Y'all just, I said that, brother. I said that. Okay, now, if you look up here, we have a QR code. If you have questions, if you want to leave information about your concerns, please scan the QR code. You see this beautiful picture of our senior leaders in government. I think we're going to have a robust, productive conversation and collaboration with the county executive. And right now, I'd like to bring up the chair of the African American Advisory Group, Dr. Valentine. Make some noise.
Good evening, everybody. I feel like saying praise the Lord. It feels good to be in the house of the Lord. It feels good to be in the house of the Lord. I'm Dr. Drina Valentine. I am a longtime resident as well as business owner based out of Silver Spring, Maryland. I feel like a little bit like Kamala Harris because nobody knows me. A few people know me, but the most important thing is that I want to let you guys know that I am the recent appointed chair of the African American Advisory Group. And if I would like right now, and if all the committee members would stand up right now so we can recognize you. Thank you very much. And the reason why I wanted them to stand up is because this evening's forum is about the concerns and the issues in the Black community, in the African American community, right? And not only is it good to be in the house of the Lord, but I'm looking down and I'm going to do a little bit more, Frederick. A lot of times folks say that, oh, Black folks have issues, but they never show up. Ask them if we showed up tonight. So this night is one of education. We're going to hear from our county executive about the budget for the next fiscal year. But at the same time, this is an issue. This is a time where you have the opportunity to come to the mic and ask questions, even the hard questions of our county executives, like, what are you doing for our community? If there is a specific concern, don't hold on to it, because the concern that you talk to your sister, your brother, your wife, your neighbor, your church member, is more likely an issue that is affecting at least 25% of the people in this room, and that is too much. That is too much. So this evening, let's respectfully listen to what it is that's entailed in the budget. And then if it's okay with you, I want to get up and start us off in the Q&A. Because the African American Advisory Group has been getting together now every month for the first Thursday in the month, but and we would like for you to be there, because together our voice is strong. In this room, our voice is strong. Our presence say that don't take us for granted. We have a voice and we want to be heard. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up our distinguished county executive, Mark Elrich. Thank you.
So good evening, everybody. And thank you all for coming out tonight. This, I think, is the largest group that I've talked to. And I've been doing, I forget if this is my 6th, 7th, or 8th. But I'm doing 11 of these. And I've been going around the county talking to different groups by community, but also we had a meeting with seniors. We've had a meeting with the Hispanic community. We had a meeting the other night with the Asian community. So we're also trying to reach out to all the diverse groups within the larger geographic fraction of the county, because it's the only way you can get a focused discussion on some of this stuff. So what I'm going to be doing tonight, I'm going to be talking about the upcoming budget. Not the past budget, because I didn't do anything about that, but I can do something about what's coming up. I'm going to lay out what the county's financial picture is, because anything we do costs money. And so you have to understand what the constraints are in the system. I would love to be up here and say yes to everything, but you're probably going to hear me say I don't know or no sometimes if I know I can't get it in the budget. I'm also going to talk with you about ways I want to change the budget and the way Montgomery County taxes. And I will show you charts that show you that Montgomery County relies too heavily on residential taxes, not enough on commercial taxes. And I'll show you what they do in Virginia and DC so you get an idea of how it changes and what that might mean for the county in terms of freeing up revenue. Because that's important to me. You know, it's not fun to go into this budget cycle every year and staring at a limited number of dollars and knowing full well I can't do everything that I want to do or everything that you want me to do. So I want you to have an understanding of what it is we're dealing with here. And my people only now starting to write the budget. So my folks, that long line of folks who you saw tonight, who've been coming to these meetings with me, and they're listening to what people have to say and trying to figure out what we can put into the upcoming budget. We've made no decisions right now about the upcoming budget. We changed, this used to be that the executive would have the listening session after the budget was done, which means nothing got changed. I wanted to make sure that our listening sessions were done before the budget gets done. So we want to hear what you have to say. That'll get reflected as much as we can in what we're able to put into the budget. And I just want everybody to understand that we are in a listening mode now. So I cannot tell you and won't tell you what I'm going to put in the budget next year for sure, in general, in specific terms, other than things like I'm going to fund the police, I'm not going to defund them, I'm not defunding the fire department, we're going to put more money into education, but dollars I can't tell you right now. And that'll come in November. We get a large distribution from the state of our tax revenues, and in January we get another very large distribution from the state. So by the beginning of January, we usually know how much money we're going to be working with in the coming year. But today, I don't know that. I have a rough idea. It's not terrible. I'm not panic-struck over this, but it's also not incredibly great. So it's somewhere in between incredibly great and not terrible. So I'll start with the budget. County has two budgets. One's a capital budget and an operating budget. And what you need to know about this is pretty simple. If it's a building, if it's a thing, if it's a truck, if it's a road, if it's anything that's a physical structure, that's in the capital budget. So we raise money. We have a capital budget that we spread out over what we can build in 6 years. It includes all of school construction. We have bond funding, which covers most of it, and we get some other funding, a little bit from the state and other agencies to help pay for it. The bigger part of the budget is the operating budget. The operating budget are the people you see. So if you see a human being, they're in the operating budget. And it's every police officer, every firefighter, every social worker, every doctor in a clinic that works for Montgomery County. All those people are in the county budget. The school system is outside the county budget, except we have to fund them, but we do not control them. And it's hard for a lot of people to understand, so I will spare you. Don't ask me if you give them all the money, why can't you tell them what to do? Because it's set up in a way that I can't tell them what to do. I can't line item any veto. I can't veto anything in the budget. I can't say I'd like to see this program and I want you to take that program out. I can suggest, I'm not shy, I've suggested things before, but I have no control over it. At the end of the day, the school budget is theirs, and then when the council gets finished with my recommendation, they make a recommendation, and that sets the limit on the dollars going over to the schools. And I'm going to talk a lot about schools, because all of us should be concerned about the schools. Next. So these are the revenues that the county had. I'm just curious, I don't need to talk into this, do I? Because you guys can hear me with this. Okay. Now I'm not fixed. So this is the revenue picture, and we get about $7,092 million in the county budget. And this is about $2.3 million that comes from property taxes. This is almost $2.1 billion, that comes from income taxes. This is an intergovernmental transfer, so we'll get money from the school system every year from the state. They'll send us money every year to build classrooms, and we get other money from the state for for example, Health and Human Services. Montgomery County, I think, is the only county in the state where we run the Health and Human Services Department rather than it being a state-run agency, which means we have more flexibility and we do things that you won't find anybody else doing in the state. Charges for services are, I guess, library fines or all this other funds. That's under fines probably. It's other services we charge for, I guess, permitting fees, other taxes. That would be, I'm trying to think what the other taxes, entertainment taxes, hotel taxes, smaller taxes. This is fines and miscellaneous, and then this is transfer and recordation taxes. Transfer and recordation taxes are what people and businesses pay when they sell their business property or their home. So when you sell your home and somebody buys it, you pay a transfer tax. New buyer owns it, they pay a recordation tax for the deed. We got 162 million. That is almost $75 million less than what was normal. Because of the collapse of the housing market, which everybody talks about, it collapsed, interest rates ridiculous, so people weren't buying and selling homes. We didn't get recordation or transfer taxes. So we've had to adjust the budgets for the last 2 years for about $75 million less money than we normally would have had the recordation taxes stayed steady. Next. These are the approved expenditures, and you can see if you take the Montgomery County Public Schools and Montgomery College, this is more than half the entire pie. After that, public safety is $755 million. All your police, all your fire, the jail, the sheriffs, anybody who works in our public safety system is in this budget. Next is Health and Human Services. It's $511 million. After that is transportation. It's the ride-on bus system and everything else we do, providing transportation in the county. Grants, insurance, and the Earned Income Tax Credit, EITC. I don't know why they lumped them all together, but we give out grants. We pay insurance, and we have this Earned Income Tax Credit that supplements the federal program to make the incomes more realistic for trying to live in Montgomery County. If you only had the federal program and the state supplement, people would struggle to live here on that money, even more than they struggle already. This is libraries. They're $129 million. Housing's $129 million. OPEB is a contribution for employee retiree benefits. And this is the one that gives me the most headache. A lot of that money goes out every year to pay the employee benefits. So it comes out of your tax dollars, and we pay it. And most of the money is in this number here, but not all the money. We are now paying so that 10 or 15 years from now, some future council will have so much money in this giant pot of money that the interest on it will mean that those residents then won't have to pay for the employee benefits out of their tax dollars. So you're paying so future people don't have to pay out of their tax dollars. Yes, it's not funny. And I've had a really strong disagreement about that. There's a policy we need to have, but we have made it way too strict. And what it costs us, and I tried this year with the school system, if we had taken some of that money and put it into the school system, they would have been fully funded. Instead, the choice was to put the money in so somebody 10 or 15 years down the line has to pay for it. It's not legally required. It's not financially necessary. We could have a reserve fund, but we don't need to do it the way we're doing it. I'm going to continue to try to convince the council to free up some of these dollars so we can address the problems that we have today. That is my priority. This little white stuff here is the operating expenses. Then there's parking planning. And then there's debt service, $480 million. And just so you understand, this is all the debt on all the schools and all the buildings we borrow for. So when I was executive and I supported everything you did on this, interest rates were incredibly low. You could borrow money for less than the inflation rate. And particularly if you were the government. And so we had this huge backlog of schools. When he came in, the backlog of schools was more than $500 million, and more than that, and growing. And so he made a commitment to putting more money into schools to try to close that backlog. because if he had delayed the construction to when we actually had the money in hand, the projects would have been more expensive. And also, if he delayed it, interest rates actually started to rise, and so the borrowing would have been more expensive. So I thought he made a very prudent decision, but it does mean we carry $480 million in debt. I don't think it's bad, and I think we've been able to manage it pretty well. This county has a AAA bond rating, again. And if you read what the rating agencies said about us, they consider us one of the best managed jurisdictions in the country. And that's because we've been very, very careful with the money. This is the same slide. This is a different slide. So this we wanted to consolidate it so you get just a broad picture. Here's education. Here's public safety. Here is the rest of the budget. All our other services outside of public safety are right there. Then there's debt service again, and then there's the OPEB again, and there's PAYGO is the amount of capital, cash, that we put into the budget so we're not borrowing as much money. But this is another thing where if we had borrowed more, instead of putting $51 million into PAYGO, if we put 30 into PAYGO, that would have been another 20 we could have used to spend money on. So governing is about choices. I would make different choices than some other people would make. Next. So these are the challenges we have right now. You all heard of the blueprint, right? Anybody not know what the blueprint is? You're not going to confess if you don't. Okay, so the blueprint's the state plan for education. It is very ambitious, and the counties in the state are rebelling because none of them have the money to implement it. And the state, which we thought was going to be contributing money to it, doesn't have the money to contribute anything to it very seriously. I will say, no slam on Hogan, but the $8 billion that Larry said that Governor Moore would have when he came into office was not there when he came into office. It was magical. It was make-believe, hypothetical money. It disappeared. And so the governor's at a point now, and this is what really hurts us, is they have no money for transportation programs. So they've said there is no transportation funding. If it is not in the ground, there is no money for it. And if you're not already in the middle of planning it, there's no money for new planning. That is going to grind us to a halt, and it's not good. So I'm working with him to figure out ways to have a more creative way of financing our budget. And I'm going to talk a lot about Virginia tonight, but that's where we're looking. We have constrained resources. The income tax rate is capped at 3.2. Everybody has to pay 3.2. We're looking at legislation that one of the delegates is going to propose that would let you go over 3.2 for incomes over $400,000, required you to give a tax break to people under that amount, to some of the people under that. We would not raise a lot of money, but we could make it more equitable and reduce tax. It would reduce taxes for about 90% of the people. Wouldn't be a lot of money, but it would be some money. Infrastructure demands. We never built our transportation system out. I'm going to harp on this again later, but without transportation, we're not economically competitive. We just cannot match Tyson's Corner. If any of you have gone over there and seen what they've done over there, and look what Montgomery County's done with no job growth here for 20 years, it all comes down to they made a decision that they were going to tax the private sector to build the best infrastructure they could build so they could attract the private sector to come to Fairfax County. And when we had the same choice to make, we said no. We don't want to do that because we're afraid the state will never give us any money, which of course was true. So we didn't get any money from the state, and we didn't put any money in, so we got nothing. And when you have nothing, you get nothing, which is kind of what we got stuck with. Inflation's been a pain. You guys are experiencing it as individuals. The county experiences when fuel costs go up. All our buses are more expensive to operate. All our buildings are more expensive to operate. Everything we buy is more expensive than it should be. We have this requirement for maintenance of effort. So the county has to pretty much spend what it spent last year on the school system, adjusted for population growth. So that means the budget can never go down. They're guaranteed that much money. So I don't have the ability as a county executive to recommend a budget that is lower than the maintenance of effort budget. And usually when they're asking for money, it's for things they really need. Most of the school budget goes into teaching. So 90% of those dollars are in teachers. We could fuss about some of the programs they've bought. I've got my complaints, but if all my complaints went away, I would not have enough extra money to solve the gap that the schools are dealing with right now. Real estate tax volatility, I told you about recordation and transfer taxes, then recruitment retention challenges. They're paying a $20,000 recruiting bonus for the police department. We are struggling to hire teachers in Montgomery County. We struggle to hire social workers. We struggle because government pay is lower than private sector pay. And people aren't just going to work for the government because they love it. They like to be paid well. And if the private sector outpays somebody for the same job they would do for us, they go there. And in some cases with the school wages, we're in really tight competition around the state. The state said all the counties have to pay $60,000 a year starting salary by 2026. We made it, I think, this year. When I raised taxes a couple of years ago, teachers were making $53,000. That is not enough to qualify for a moderately priced dwelling unit in Montgomery County. So a teacher could not get the only affordable housing unit that we produce in Montgomery County because they make too little money. Now they're going to be making 60, but so is everybody else in the state. So if I make 60 in Montgomery and I make 60 in Calvert County or Anne Arundel or Howard, Baltimore County, or the Eastern Shore, where you can live for less than live here, we're not going to be competitive. We're not going to bring teachers in unless we're over what the state minimum is going to be. So we're going to have to continue to raise. We're not going to be able to stay at the same level as the state. Next. This is just a diagram of what's messed up about transfer and recordation taxes. So the gray line is kind of like what the average would have been. You're a little bit below, you're a little bit above, little below, little above. Then here's where the council had given away, told the developers they don't have to pay impact taxes on top of metro stations. It blew a giant hole in our budget. So the council decided to raise the transfer and recordation taxes on all of you to fill the hole in the budget that they'd given away to the developers. And the project that was, I don't know if you saw the project that was in the paper the other day at Strathmore. Anybody catch the price of the apartments in that complex? You were subsidizing $10,000 3 bedrooms, $7,000 2 bedrooms, and $4,000 1 bedrooms. That's what you're subsidizing. So we could get that kind of housing there. I'm not sure, they don't have to build the affordable in the first phase of the project. We'll see when it comes. Next. This is what I think is the most distressing thing about the budgets. This is, the gray line is, 2 gray lines are state and county money combined together. So in 2010, we peaked, these are adjusted for inflation, so we're talking about the same value of the dollar. We peaked at $22,800 per pupil. Today, we're at $20,600 and something dollars. I need more definition on that projector. So we're down about, that would be about $2,000 per pupil. If you look at Montgomery County spend, I come in about over here, and I've been trying to ramp that up, but this is what's happened to us. In 2010, we were spending the equivalent of $16,300 a year. Now we're spending $13,300. We're spending $3,000 less per year in the county. So if you wonder why the schools are having trouble, why they don't have enough teachers, why they don't have aides in the classroom, and all those things, it starts with this. If you spend less per pupil, you get less. This is not rocket science. You know, if they're paying for a bunch of executives and stuff, I get being angry. But what you're paying for is teachers. And teachers are the ones who do this job. And not paying them enough and not keeping pace with where we were 14 years ago now is pretty pathetic. Next. This is per pupil spending by jurisdiction. There's Montgomery County today. Montgomery County used to be at the top. At the top is, this is, where's the name on the thing? I think it's not Baltimore County. There's Howard, there's Baltimore City, there's Prince George's, all above Montgomery, Anne Arundel and Baltimore County below us. So I'm at a loss because the name has disappeared from the top there. But anyway, there are all these other places that are higher than us, and we're not anymore. And so other people chose to maintain these investments. We did not. Next. This is the problem with our borrowing. We borrow $280 million a year in bonds. So if you were buying something 5 years ago, 7 years ago, and you paid $280 for it, you wouldn't expect to pay $280 for it today. Inflation. Construction, the inflation has been higher than typical inflation. So our bonding has stayed absolutely flat, down to $280 million a year. Over 6 years, when I was on the council, we were spending $340 million a year. That's $60 million a year less, $360 million less over 6 years. And you wonder why we're having a hard time keeping up with school renovations and why we're having to look at tax increases to do things. Without being able to bond, without bonds keeping pace with inflation, you buy less and less of a school building every year. So the school you built, 10 years ago doesn't cost, well, it costs a lot less than the school you're going to build today if it's the same school. We need to keep pace with the money we put into construction, just like we need to keep pace with classrooms. Next. So this comes to my favorite topic, which is need for tax restructuring. Montgomery County's tax system was based on this being a suburban county, all residential. I moved to Montgomery County in 1960. I was part of a wave of people who migrated from DC for reasons that you all are perfectly well familiar with and moved into Montgomery County. Montgomery County was a safe haven because Montgomery County had covenants on all the land in Montgomery County, so black people and Jews couldn't buy homes in Montgomery County. That's 1960. Not all that long ago. I grew up with it. I was 10 years old at the time. And we just had this residential development, and then our parents worked in DC, or they had some professional jobs out here. But we had pretty stable incomes and a very different situation than today. Now, we're a mature development county. Our jobs aren't all reliant on what's inside of DC. NIH is an enormous institution. If you take NIH and FDA and NIST, pack in the school system with 30,000 employees and the county government with 10,000 employees, there's an awful lot of work being done in Montgomery County. And we need to change with the times. We're not competitive anymore. And the least competitive part about Montgomery County is transportation. There are articles, even in the Washington Post, which I admit to hating, but they hate me, so it's fair. It's a mutual thing. But even they wrote articles about why transportation was the key investment for the urban areas in the DC metropolitan area. And they said, without transportation, your economies are dead. So Virginia made a decision, 2012. The developers said, we like Tyson's Corner, you're going to build this infrastructure. Fairfax Council said, no, because we don't have the money. They were stuck like we were. We don't have the money to build the infrastructure. So the developers and the Fairfax Council go down to Richmond, run by Republicans with a Republican governor. They asked Richmond to give them the taxing authority to tax the private sector, not single-family homes, but to tax the commercial sector to build infrastructure. That money couldn't be used for health care, couldn't be used for education, couldn't be done any of the nice things. It had to be used on transportation infrastructure. The developer said, tax us. Because with that tax, you will build and we will build a world-class transportation infrastructure. And if you look at Northern Virginia now and Montgomery County now, and you compare our transportation against us, we still have the red line, and that's it. And remember, the red line was moved to ferry people from the suburb into the district to work. It was never meant to serve Montgomery County as an economic development tool. It goes up Wisconsin, it goes up Georgia. There's no cross connectivity in the county, so people can't move east-west, they can move north-south on one side of, each of one side of the county. So we got stuck with a very bad transportation system, and nobody has been willing to tackle this, because every time you say, how are we going to pay for it? If you suggest that the private sector pay for it, the private sector, which spends a lot of money in political campaigns, make sure that they have always had councils that would listen to their concerns. I prefer to listen to the concerns of people who want to grow the economy here. We're not going to win this battle if we're not willing to do the kind of things that they were willing to do in Virginia. And all you got to do is look for them for proof. It's not like This is an abstract example. You can look at them and you can see everything that got built over here. You can look at us and see what isn't happening over here. And it's a real problem. The one thing we're strong in, and we've been really good with, has been life sciences. That is an area that I recognized when I got elected that we could exploit, because we're the #3 life sciences place in the country. And so we've been driving life sciences like crazy here. But I need a more diverse economy than just life sciences. And I need to be able to really move people more broadly in the county. So next. So these are the things that will probably shock you. This is District of Columbia. This is their commercial property tax. Commercial property tax goes up to $1.89 if your property is worth more than $10 million. If your property is worth more than $5 million, it's $1.60. Then it goes down to $1.04. Residential property taxes in DC are 85 cents. All you got to look at is 85 cents on residents, $1.89 on commercial property. That's how residential property taxes get lowered, by having a decent tax rate over here. Go to Fairfax County, since everybody talks about going to Virginia. Their base tax rate is about $1.20. Their special taxing districts in Virginia add 31 cents. Tyson's Corner has massive special taxing districts. Those special taxing districts put their tax in Tyson's Corner, Fairfax, over $1.50. Here's Montgomery County. We're $1.15, but 11 of it goes to the state. So the county only gets $1.04. So we're playing with $1.04. Fairfax is playing with $1.50. And DC is playing with $1.89. You get the idea that we can't build what they build. You want to be like them, and you want to aspire to be able to achieve what they've achieved, but you don't want to do anything they do. If that's the path we continue to take, then there's no way we narrow this gap. It's just not possible. It cannot happen. This is from the District of Columbia. All my numbers are other people's numbers. I don't ever want to be accused of picking my numbers. So this is from a report that DC does, and they rank the commercial tax burden in the region, and the highest tax group, this is for small corporations, highest tax group is DC, then it's Alexandria, Arlington, Fairfax, Prince George's, and Montgomery is the lowest tax. For large corporations, DC is the highest, then it's Alexandria, Arlington, Fairfax, Prince George's County, and then Montgomery County. So just ask yourself the logical question, why is everybody going to Virginia if our taxes are lower? It makes sense, right? Why would you go pay $1.51 in Tyson's Corner when you could pay $1.04 in Montgomery County? I don't know. It's because you got a major subway line that connects you into DC and a ton of jobs that are close to the river. They're building all kinds of transit in all the Northern Virginia counties. You can't go anywhere without seeing those projects. And Montgomery County has nothing to show for it. And that's the problem. That's what's got us in this box. That's what I'm trying to get us out of. Next. So, your questions. If you ask me a question, I've got my staff over there. I'm going to let them answer some of the ones because I cannot memorize everything, and I don't want to say something half. So if I feel like I want backup from my team, I'll let them answer some of the questions. But feel free to ask away. There are going to be 2 microphones around the room, and the rule is, if you try to grab the microphone, then I'm giving it to you. This is to prevent microphone domination. And so basically, they will hold the mic and you speak into the mic.
Okay, how about now? Okay, so what we're going to ask everyone to do, in order to be fair to everyone, we're going to ask everyone to line up here in order so that we can ask your question. Make sure we come to you, first come, first serve, so that way it's fair to everyone. Just stand over here off to this side of the stage, and we'll take your questions one by one. Anyone who is not able to walk, there's no need. If you're not able to walk and stand over here, we will come to you. Just raise your hand. We're not going to make you walk over here if you're not able to, or if you're able to stay in your seat. So Nordea over there on that side of the stage, she will come to you. Just raise your hand. But other than that, if you're able to, please stand on this side of the stage so we can take your question in order. And also, because we have a lot of people here tonight, please try to keep your question to about 2 minutes. There's not enough time with all the people here to make sure we get to everyone's question for people to give speeches. Please make sure that you have an actual question for the county executive.
Good evening, everyone. I failed to let you guys know that the African American Advisory Group was commissioned by the County Executive Office to bring questions and concerns to the county executive. So tonight, if you are not able to get your question in, please see one of the committee members. If you could stand up again one more time, please seek them out. Cherie Branson, Dr. Chapman, Ms. Freeman, Vernon Ricks. Please see them, or myself, Dr. Drina Valentine. And I'm going to start this off, if you don't mind. County Executive, thank you for the presentation. The African American Advisory Group is going to submit a report of recommendations that we've already discussed. However, my question tonight is, you stated the budget hasn't been finalized. Tonight, you're going to hear a number of concerns, most of which can't be resolved without funding. So what is going to happen with the questions and concerns that are presented tonight?
Probably the same thing that happens every year. Some stuff makes it into the budget. Some things don't. Some things make it in part way, but not all the way. And we look at some things we're doing and make a decision whether something we're doing is not as valuable as something we can replace it with. Because I cannot print money. So at the end of the day, I've got the dollars that I have, and I have to figure out how to make them get where they go. If you look at our budget, if you take out the schools, which I consider, large social service that they provide to the county, and you take out police and fire, which nobody's going to want to take out, you're not left with a whole lot of money to play with. $450 million spread over all these different departments does not get us very far. So we will make choices. Hopefully, if we can change the tax structure, then I'll try to explain this as simply as I could. If I had a tax structure that paid for the transportation projects that were capital projects out of the budget, and I took it out of the budget and put it into a commercial tax, that would free up the tax dollars that are now paying for that, and would free it up to do other things. It would free up my cash in the budget, that the $50 million I'm putting into construction, I wouldn't have to put as much of it in there. So we're hoping that we can free up money in the rest of our budget by taking some of these things that's set in our budget and move them into the tax on the private sector like they do in Virginia. And whatever tax we do will still be lower than Virginia's tax. I'm not going to put myself in a situation where the same, particularly since we're trying to play catch up, we need to be under them.
Yes. Please, this way. No, I'm okay. Can I? Oh, you're welcome. Very good. Hey, Mark, as you stated, you moved here in 1960. I moved in the 60s as well in this county. Hey, I'm blind. I'm blind. Just give me the microphone. Give it to me. Give me that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, Mark, as you're aware, as you said, you moved to this county in 1860. I moved here in the 60s as well. At that time, if you from the standpoint of this county, you're aware of the fact that we used to pay taxes because taxes were very important. You raised taxes, and when the majority in this county was white, you'd have no problem of raising taxes because the school system needs taxes, the county needs taxes money. But now, because you're no longer in the majority in the school system and so forth, and also from the county standpoint, you're getting old, we're getting older, people saying they don't want to raise taxes. The only way you can keep up with anything is raise taxes. As I said a long time ago to you, I have no problem paying taxes because I want kids today that have the same opportunities as my kid when I moved here. So in order for us to satisfy the budget, you're going to have to raise taxes. Now, I know from a political standpoint, you don't want to do that. Why don't you raise taxes, put it in your budget, and so we can fight for what we need.
So I'm going to try to raise taxes, but raise them in a targeted way so I don't get the pushback out of the residential community. And because the commercial community would understand all the money they get, since it's not going to any social programs, is only going to go to build transportation and infrastructure that benefits them. My hope is if economic development really works, they benefit, they build more, then we get more taxes on corporations and on the incomes that people produce. And that's the way we'll get the money. It's not as quick as a direct tax, but I'm not sure there's an appetite for a direct tax. And you're right in your analogy. I think about Prince George's County. Prince George's County has a trim amendment. The only reason they got the trim amendment was the white people pulled all their kids out of the public schools. They created all of these private academies all over Prince George's County. And as soon as they'd removed the white population from the public schools, the white council, put a tax limit on the county that has left them hostage to this inability to raise taxes, because the white people wanted to make sure they weren't going to pay taxes for kids in black schools. That's what it was. And any of you old enough to remember this and knew that I was a kid growing up, I was in high school when this nonsense was going on. I was at the University of Maryland. That's what happened over here. That's what happened over there.
He says it's his job to hold the mic, so if he moves, I move. Okay, so my name is Robert Cosby. Thank you, County Executive, for your presentation. My question really is about how we do this from a progressive tax perspective that can be graduated over time, that will share the pain for everyone, because people don't seem to like new taxes for the most part. And you have been criticized in the past for pushing for what other people don't want. So the question really is, how do we do it and make it palatable for the county, since we know that long-term there have to be benefit?
Well, I'll go back to what I said before. That's why I'm focusing on commercial property. Commercial property, they know the benefit they got. The fact that in Virginia, you've got to remember the same developers in Montgomery County develop on the other side of the river. So they happily are going and paying $1.51 in Tyson's, or if they're building in DC, they're paying $1.89. They're not running back here and saying, I'm going to stay in Montgomery County because your taxes are less. We've got room to go and be competitive without squeezing taxpayers. And if we can get this legislation through on the income tax, I could offer a little bit of tax relief. It's not a lot. It would probably mean the most at incomes under $50,000, but they're the folks that are hardest to house, hardest to take care of. If you make $50,000, you can afford 30% of your income for housing. That's $15,000 divided by 12. Divided by 12, what are you? Not a whole lot. $1,400 a month, something like that. So where are you going to find a $1,400 a month apartment? You're not.
It's a little bit. No, just raise it up for me. Thank you. My name is Tiffany Kelly. Mark, you know me very well. I'm a proud resident of the city of Gaithersburg. I am here to talk about Black issues specifically. My phone is about to blow up because I think many people want to know, how will the needs of our community be met? Specifically, case in point, a lot of us are here because of Mr. Hawkins. Mr. Hawkins is expected to be on the pulse of the needs, the desires, what the Black community needs, and he is only part-time. You have other liaisons who are in this community that are full-time. We know who has some of the worst outcomes in this county and in our schools. How can we get a commitment to have a full-time community liaison considering the needs that the Black community has and continues to have? One of my largest concerns is, as a Black person, there's nowhere for me to go to say, as a Black person, I need help. That is not generally true for many other groups and ethnicities. We need a full-time community liaison along with some other measures that will cost money, but we are the group that's at peril in this county.
So one little correction and just a general comment. The liaisons that are not part-time have other jobs in the county. So they're half-time as liaisons and they're half-time not. The three African Americans, Caribbean Africans, and Continental Africans each has a half-time person. The Asian community only has a half-time person. We don't distinguish between China, South Asia, and East Asia. And the Latino community has a half-time, and we don't distinguish between Central America, Caribbean, and South America. This is a system that has been in place for years, and I would feel like I have to raise everybody, which is not the money we've had in the budget. I would rather put money into programs. If the budget is good enough to raise them all, I will try to raise them all again. But I do feel that the issue is not different from other people who tell me the limitations of not having full-time access to somebody, regardless of the community. But I think he's doing a great job. He has discussed this with me, and we're going to see what we can do. But you may want me to put money in an actual program if I get down to the point of choosing between this or that. Because that's what all these budgets, every time I've done this, and this will be my sixth one, I guess. At some point, you're always saying it's either this program or that program. And there's nothing more depressing. And I've done this every budget. Looked at a list of things that were on the list of what I was going to put in the budget. And when the final numbers came in, I'm the one that has to take them out. It is horrifying to be that person to say, I'm not giving money to this, I'm not giving money to that. So I hear you. I will try to deal with it. But I also want to make sure we put maximum money into programs because that's where the kids are going to get the most help. Okay. I hear you.
Good evening, Mark. I do want to just echo also the Caribbean American Advisory Group with full-time liaison. But this evening, Mark, I'm here. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm here representing the Montgomery County Black Collective. Michelle is out of the country, and Kim is receiving an award tonight, which goes to the testament of type of work she's doing in the county. So I do have some observations and some recommendation from the Black Collective. The Montgomery County Black Collective conducted a series of small group dialogues with African Americans, African and Caribbean business owners, and there is a consensus that the county is a good place to do business. But the business startup ecosystem is disjointed, and there's a lack of ongoing outreach and assistance in procurement of Black-owned businesses. Technical assistance for Black-owned businesses needs more proactive outreach by agencies and procurement decision makers, including actual introductions and information sessions. Our recommendation would be the information and resources of business centers, MC, EDC, Black Collective, Maryland Women's Business Center, LEDC, and others in the ecosystem need more uniform promotion and a roadmap for entrepreneurs so they know what is required, recommended at each stage of their startup. In addition to how the information is disseminated, the county needs an impact study on the effects of dollars in the Black community rather than a list of total funding within an agency, such as procurement. Our recommendation is that funding should be directed at the Office of Racial and Equity Social Justice to implement a study that determines the impact of Black community, not just a dollar allocated. Black nonprofits and Black-owned companies are considered consistently underserved. Nonprofits receive far less funding than their white counterparts and struggle to build their infrastructures. Black-owned companies struggles with access to capital, receiving smaller and fewer contracts, less loans and grants, and a fraction of available venture special. Some county contracts are executed without any overhead, a necessary ingredient, I would say, for building infrastructure in any business. Our recommendation is to invest in the infrastructure of Black-led organizations representing the community, such as the Montgomery County Black Collective, and provide operating grants to help Black business and nonprofits in Montgomery County. Thank you.
So I think a lot has changed over the last couple of years, particularly coming out of COVID. We have a business center that we did not have when I came into office. And we now have business centers in all the regional services areas of the county, and their job is to work with local small businesses, including minority small businesses. I know that Ash Shetty in the procurement department has worked explicitly with local small businesses and with minority businesses. I've been to workshops where they target those populations. And if we're not publicizing enough or doing enough to let people know what we're doing, then we've got to do a better job of letting them know when those things are happening. I think that your other question, which was the first one around, not that, but what was your first, where did you start on the beginning one? I think you will find that our people that they are doing this kind of work in the community now that they weren't doing before. Like I said, it may not be as broad as they may not be advertising themselves as broadly as they can, but we've actually put these resources in place and we're spending them now. So I'd be happy to talk with you. I think the other question about doing an assessment, which I think was your question, that's something we should do, because I can tell you that the minority spend is, I think, 28 or 29% now. It's the highest it's ever been. Minority and small business, so it includes women-owned businesses and veteran-owned businesses as well. But it's a quarter of the budget now. It's more than it's ever been, and we've been very pointed about it. This time, when Ash did his briefing in the East County 2 weeks ago, he talked about how the number of new businesses getting first-time contracts in Montgomery County was 48% of the contracts that were given out in the county were the first-time winners. One of the things I've been very conscious about breaking up in the county is the old boys network, because when I go back to running in 2018, and Sidney Katz was running for council again. Sidney was my tiebreaker on the council for minimum wage. We made an agreement that if the wage passed, and if I got elected, we would do a listening tour. We brought all my staff out to listen to all the businesses to tell us why they hate us, because we knew they did. And we wanted to know why we were so difficult. And so we've made major changes in procurement, made major changes in permitting. Rabia Samikan, who I stole from Rockville, has done an amazing job changing the way that department operates now. And we were very conscious of wanting to make sure that people who never got contracts here got contracts. And so when I walked into a room full of minority business people, and they were there to learn about how to bid, they were only there because the word is getting out that you can actually win a contract here, which is not what you heard if you heard 6 years ago. People would have said, give up. It only goes to those guys. So we are moving on that.
I agree, Mark. We're moving, but as you can tell, this is
Yep.
from the response. This is a consensus proposal.
And we want to know more.
So we'd love to sit down with you and talk some more about that.
Yeah, we want to know more about it. We want to know about the impact, like money, where the money goes and how it impacts the community could be two very different things.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, we have a lot of people in line here, and to make sure that we do get through everyone in time, please keep your questions to 2 minutes and not give a speech. Have an actual question for the county executive.
No problem. Thank you. Good evening, County Executive. My name is Brooke Holmes. I am the president of the Potomac Valley Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I have a membership of 189, and of that, about 60% of my members are over the age of 62. So I consider senior citizens. So though I have questions in all the areas, and many things have not been touched on, I do want to focus specifically on the senior gap. as we call it, the senior gap. So facts, we know that Montgomery County has a sizable population of people 65 years of age or older who fall in between Medicaid eligibility and having the private resources to pay for the long-term care they may need to live safely and with quality of life in their homes and communities. And this is what they call the senior gap. So specifically, I don't think I've reached my 2 minutes yet. Specifically, my question, oh Lord, give me 1 second. I still got time, I promise. All right, my question with regard to senior gap is, does the budget include plans to fund or expand programs to support seniors who want to age in place or to address the senior gap?
So I would say we have money in the budget and we'll continue to have money in the budget to deal with people wanting to age in place. We've got a program for that. We've got a program to even find if you want a roommate to live with you so you can help spread the costs. We've got a program that does that. So those things we can do. Whether the county is ever going to step in and fill an insurance gap, I think that's beyond the ability of the county. I mean, the number of seniors we have and the size of those gaps is enormous. And I would wind up not being able to do much else. This is really a job for the federal government.
Mark,
yeah.
This way.
Up.
This way. Thank you for wanting to do something about property taxes. I pay 10 times more than what I paid when I lived in California because I live in Montgomery County. And LA is not cheap. But I'm here to raise a question about the hiring process. Even though there's this computerized system that is supposed to be, I guess, fair about selecting individuals, whoever designed it, and I raised the question to the staff, I said, what population did you norm it on? Because if you didn't norm it on a population that included me, then it's not valid. I mean, the oximeter that you put on your finger is a joke because it doesn't read accurately for people of color. Now, they don't tell you that in the hospital, but it's a fact. In the bathrooms, when you used to stick your hand under for the water to come out, it didn't work at one point because the sensor didn't recognize people of color. So all I'm saying is that I'd like money in the budget to put together some kind of a task force, a group, who will look at the hiring process because I don't think it's fair. And if we can't get individuals into positions that are going to address our needs because you don't know how to play the game with the computer, then it's a waste of time.
If you look at my staff, it's pretty diverse. But if you look at county hiring, 29% of county employees are African American. The African American population is 21%. So they are represented in the county, and they're represented at all levels in the county. So I'm not sure what you're identifying as a gap.
Mark, it's just like, you can look at the numbers and say we've got 20-some% or whatever. All I'm saying is that the process, the selection process, is flawed. So no matter what the number is, if the selection process is flawed, it needs to be corrected. That's all I'm saying.
So if you give me some suggestions about what you think, I have my own ideas about flaws in the system.
Well, it has to go back to the computerized system, which no one could tell me how it was normed. And if it was normed on white folks, then it doesn't apply to me. What goes in is what comes out. If you don't understand how to build the program the algorithm so that it includes me, then I'm excluded automatically. And you can still get your numbers.
That means people are getting jobs.
No,
through
it
the
means
system.
it means that people who are qualified are not getting jobs. That's what it means.
Okay. If you want to sit down with me and get more specific about what you think is not right and how things are scored, I'm happy to have the discussion. Like I said, I've got a couple of things on my own list.
Awesome. Good evening, county executive and community members. My name is Philip Alexander Downey, he, him, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Montgomery County Pride Family and Moco Pride Center, Inc. I want to preemptively thank you for your commitment to uplifting our most marginalized, underserved, and disenfranchised community members. As we work together to establish the county's first LGBTQIA+ resource center, I want to emphasize the critical need for year-round funding and support for our Black LGBTQIA+ community members who face disproportionately high rates of housing instability, mental health challenges, family rejection, suicide, and greater disparities in almost every measurable category of wellness. Consistent resources are urgently needed. This year, we received supplemental funding and then an allocation to cover vital programs and crucial linkage to wellness operations for only part of the year. My question, given these urgent needs, will you commit to not only maintaining but increasing funding in the upcoming budget to cover the full year of programs and ensure that the Montgomery County Pride family can provide sustained year-round services? This support is critical to maintaining accessible resources that reach and serve our most underserved and disenfranchised, marginalized residents.
So the part-year services were intended to be a prelude to full-year services, so they will be full-year in the budget.
Hey, Mark, it's me again. My name is Rabita Moses, and when you mentioned that you have people that work for you, it's very diverse. That's like a white person saying, I have Black friends. Moving forward, County Executive Mark Elridge, under your watch, 2 African American cemeteries are being desecrated as we speak. In addition to that, neighborhoods in Rockville like Lincoln Park are experiencing high levels of displacement of Black residents due to your lack of policy to stop gentrification. And another thing I want to add to this is, in the summer of 2024, you increased the use of police drones in this county. This program will most likely normalize and encourage the over-policing of Black, low-income, marginalized, and vulnerable communities. We want less money for police and more money for housing, because housing is a human right. And my question is, housing is a human right. Am I right? Yeah. Thank you. And I want to know, when are you going to stop the desecration of the 2 African American cemeteries that are going on right now?
So, I know where to start. Drones, they work. They help protect people. The cameras are not on the ground until they're over a suspect who they are called to respond to. We have a drone program. It's now I think we're up to 4 drones now. And if there's a police call, then the drone can get there faster than a police car can get there. And the drone has been able to get to cases, been over the case, been able to identify a suspect, and follow a suspect until the police can catch the suspect. I am not in favor of letting people who beat people, rob people, or any of that other stuff walk away from it because I can't respond fast enough. The drones are being used in a way that protects people's civil liberties. They do not fly on the ground and film people. They don't do any of that. They're over on the scene. When they're on the scene, the cameras comes down. There are 2 cemeteries that I know about. One, we're trying to help, because that's the one where somebody's encroaching on their property and keeps trying to take it. I don't have legal authority as a county executive to tell them They can't do what they're doing, but we're trying to work with them because I believe that the boundary line includes the property that's in the cemetery, not what the owner thinks. The other cemetery you're talking about is not a cemetery. The cemetery is beside the cemetery is beside the HOC building. It is not being, you know,
You guys.
yeah, it is. You all know about the Moses Cemetery? Anybody? So Moses Cemetery was moved from the District of Columbia in about 1911 to a piece of property next to where there's an HOC building today. The HOC didn't build the building on the cemetery. Another developer built the building on the cemetery. So in 1911 or 12, they moved the cemetery there. By the mid-1950s, the cemetery had ceased to be actively being buried. The cemetery sold to WSSC the ability to build a pipeline through the cemetery, which was ridiculous. But then this was owned by Benevolence Society. It was Moses, Morning Star. So it's one of the historic Benevolence Societies, same group that owns the church on Falls Road, the cemetery on Falls Road. So they sold the cemetery to a developer. This is around 1960. The developer scrapes the property in order to build an office building. And it's not HOC, this was done by a previous owner. So he scraped the property. He either piled the bodies up against Westport Avenue and then graded it for where the driveways goes down, or some people think he took the bodies, put them in a dump truck, and sent them far away. But this is all around 1960. It is today the driveway that is next to the HOC building on the cemetery. I agreed with the cemetery people that we should certainly memorialize it. You can't take away the driveway because it's the only access into the apartment building, but you can memorialize it. The back part of it, there's a second parcel, which is part of the cemetery, and that they don't need to park on at all. So I told Park and Planning, I don't want you putting your park through there with a trail. I want it set aside, unearthed from the asphalt, and made into a cemetery. So that's where the cemetery is. It's in the maps, it's in the stories, and everybody knows that's where the cemetery is. The people we've talked to from the other Moses Cemetery know about this cemetery, and they wrote a letter saying the cemetery is this piece of land next to the HOC building. Somebody has claimed that another piece of land, which was never a cemetery, and has never been considered a cemetery, even by the state, that land where this guy's building, the self-storage unit, is the cemetery. There is no cemetery there. No bones are coming out of the ground, and no headstones are coming out of the ground. I've been out there personally. I've walked the site personally. People watched it day after day. If they'd seen a pile of bones from a mass burial, you would have seen a pile of bones from a mass burial. So just so you know, I mean, it is painful to talk about this because it should be memorialized. I've argued from the beginning that I would work with them to memorialize what's left of the cemetery and to guarantee nothing else gets built on it, but it is not what they say it is.
All right, we have a question over here.
Hi, County Executive. My name is Quentin Strange, and I was a Montgomery County employee for 18 years for ABS. After COVID, I lost my job, for lack of better terms. And at that point in time, I was needing public assistance. And I went to the Germantown HHS for assistance. And that building was, the employees there were less than friendly. And the service that I got was less than admirable, to say the least. And it has continued on through today. Not just with me, I'm finally back on my feet, but I've been able to help other people because that's my charity work, to help other people and even people of color. My statement and things to kind of look for is the level of overview of all of these departments are beyond subpar. So these directors that you have running these departments that's supposed to be for the people are not for the people, but for certain people. So you need to overview or stand up to these or reevaluate these directors of these departments because they're running them into the ground and not for the people because it's subpar.
If you would like to talk to one of my staff about what you've run into
I
over there,
will.
I'm happy to have you do that.
Absolutely.
Hello, good evening, county executive. My name is Nicole. I have a question for you. Thank you for your time, and everyone that's here. Thank you for coming, and everyone that cooked and everything was very delicious. Thank you very much. My question is for continuum care. Is there a timeline on that? When you're in the shelter, is there a timeline on it? Like, you know, do you have a certain amount of time when you can be in a shelter?
I don't know if there's a limit. I know people have been in shelters for a pretty long time. Dr. Bridges, do you know if there's a timeline?
I can get your information. Christine Hung should be watching this. We can have a follow-up conversation. The care continues. There is no time limit. There is no term to that. So if you are experiencing some challenges with that, then come see me. Let me know. We can have a conversation. And let me just back up, Mr. County Executive, because as the Director of the Department of Health and Human Services, I take what we do very seriously. So, sir, we can have a conversation. If someone has not respected you because that's not our intent, I'm here to speak up. I'm not that director that sits back. So we can have a conversation. And since you presented that to the county executive, I would welcome any conversation you have because we are here to support the community and serve the people. We are a community serving agency, and anyone in here knows that I get involved. I'm out in the community. I'm from the community. So when I feel that someone is being disrespectful, it is my job and obligation to follow up. So let's have a conversation after this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mark, for being here. My name is Jeremiah Pope. I've attended many of these forums. I actually brought my son in here today. I actually picked him up from karate. So I have a couple of questions, but I know I don't want to linger on anything. We have a lot of Black small business owners here in this audience who are very, very successful and that are willing to help you navigate the challenges that we're having from a fiscal standpoint. Time and time again, we read about jobs going in up to 70, jobs going in other parts of the corridor. So what I'm asking for you is that maybe we need to figure out how can we get more jobs, particularly with Black people, African Americans, in the eastern part of the county and in Montgomery County in general. Because I hear people saying it over and over again that we have these tech jobs, but nothing is located in the eastern part of the county. Nothing is located in the Black neighborhoods. And like my person alluded to, when it's time for these jobs, when they eventually come, they won't be hired by Black people. And that's a problem because I want my son to grow up one day to continue to live here in the county and be able to get some of these jobs that we're hoping that will come.
So we've done several things that I think address the East County. When I came into office, there were 3 shopping centers that were supposed to be developed that weren't being developed. All 3 of them are being developed now. The first spur of the bus rapid transit is on 29. It's not what it needs to be, but it's going to become what it needs to be. But I designed it. I'm the one that actually mapped out that, and I'm the one that pushed to get it on 29, not because the jobs were there, but because transportation was necessary in order to get jobs there. And so I wanted to prioritize putting transportation over there. right after I got elected, I went to Montgomery College and I asked them to open up at the East County campus of Montgomery College in White Oak, because there was no school over there. So kids from the East County, if they wanted to take advantage of college programs, couldn't do it, whereas they could do it if you were up to 270 Corridor or in Rockville. So that school is now open, and that school is expanding. And Mr. Bradley, who's doing the development of Viva White Oak, a 300-acre development that he's doing, which is going to be very significant. He has a life sciences arm. He has a company in his stable of companies that is a life sciences company, and they intend to bring life science jobs there. And Montgomery College is going to evolve over there as having a curriculum that matches the bringing of businesses over there. I've been very conscious about trying to put together the pieces of what would make the East County work, getting people the retail they want, getting housing built in the East County. Again, we've had some of the first big housing developments go in over there. So I think you're going to see the things you want are starting to happen.
Mr. County Executive, by the way, we also do have Anthony Featherstone, who is the Executive Director of Worksource Montgomery. He's in the back there. If you could just stand up, and hopefully we could connect him with Mr. Jeremiah Pope to really talk to you about the collaboration between, as the County Executive mentioned, Montgomery College East County Center, Education Center, and Worksource Montgomery.
Thank you. And so what we're hearing today is that we'll be able to have some form of mechanism to track the fact that if X amount of jobs come into the eastern part of the county and or the county, we'll see a growth of more black people getting some of these jobs. That's the only thing I'm concerned about, because I know the data and it doesn't really show that.
I know the data, which is why I focused on getting the 3 stalled projects unstalled. I didn't stall, they were dead in the water until I came in.
The time is now 8:40, so we do ask again if you can keep your question to about 2 minutes and to actually have a question. We are running short on time, so just please make sure you have a question for the county
We
executive.
do have one question over here as well.
Thank you for coming. My question, I want you to think about this in a different way. From your point of view, the county has had some serious shortfalls in terms of the last few years. But clearly we have done well in some areas. Can you explain to us where we're doing exceptionally well and how that has allowed us to perform, or should I say overperform? I think that sheds light on where we need to prioritize.
That's why I've tried to focus. And my first projects were on the East County. If you want to look, the first thing I did was engage every developer who couldn't get their project moving and personally put myself into the negotiations and got the projects moving. Because it is not good that the county turned the East County into the place where they park all the low-income housing and wouldn't dare put the same kind of housing they put over there into the Bethesda area. You know that, I know that. So I've been trying to deal with that since I got elected. And I'm going to keep doing that. It's a priority.
Yep. Hi, I'm Shanita Sinkler. I'm a mom of 3 in the county and also a member here at Mount Calvary. And
I'm sorry. I'm Petronella Barrow. I'm the program coordinator for the Maryland Sickle Cell Disease Association.
And so what we wanted to talk to you about is we heard about underserved and needy populations, but the sickle cell population is a very needy population in this county. We've heard about how wealthy this county is. Yet the care offered for sickle cell patients, especially adult patients, is abysmal. So we are seeking a commitment from you for that population to stand up a sickle cell clinic dedicated to treating people with sickle cell that live in this county so they don't need to travel outside to DC and other places to get care. And I would just point out to you that the same situation existed in Prince George's County 2 years ago, and with the support of the county executive and the county council, and specifically allotting funds for that type of clinic. There is now a clinic in Prince George's County. So can we count on your support to help stand up a clinic in this county so that people like me who have children with sickle cell don't have to move out of the county when they become adults because there's no care here offered for them.
Keisha, should I ask you about that one, or should I ask Dr. Bridges?
Have already started having conversations with the hospitals. I actually have a meeting in a couple of weeks with our hospital partners to talk about what they're doing for sickle cell. We've had we have presented the data to the hospitals because they weren't really looking at it, and we've asked them to share their data back with us at HHS. And starting to have the conversations about what can we do, what does care look like, how can we improve it. The things that they've done in the past are really around patient education, and we know that patient education is enough. Patients already know that they're in pain. Where we really need to be focusing is around the providers and making sure that they're up to date with the treatments on sickle cell. We have a lot of new research that's available, and what we're finding is that the doctors in the community, especially the ER physicians, are going with what they learned in medical school 20 years ago and not all taking advantage of the new technologies that are available. So I do want to credit Ms. Sinkler and the Sickle Cell Warriors for bringing this up because it wasn't something that we were really talking about. And so community forums like this are what helps get the things moving that need to be.
I'm not hearing a commitment they're willing to invest in a center for that population. We're not willing to invest in a center for that population. I'm not hearing a commitment to.
She's told you where we are. She told you where we are in the process, and I imagine that means it's going to lead to us providing some support or a facility. But I don't have a proposal. So when you've got the attention of our department, they are working on it, and when they have a proposal, I'll tell you what we're going to put in the budget. That's why we're listening now.
Okay, the proposal's first.
And we do have a question over here.
Hi, good evening. My name is Denise, and I do have a quick question. In looking at your presentation, it looked like a large part of our path forward is your plan to change the tax structure to look more at taxing commercial development. And so my question is, it sounds like you need the agreement of the county council to do that. If that does not happen, is there a plan B to carry forth these programs? And what I'm thinking of, we need increased mental health support for our community. We need more police, but also better policing to combat crime and to understand how mental health plays a role in that. And so as a parent and as a property owner, it's kind of tight right now with inflation to raise taxes on residential property. So what would be the plan B if we couldn't execute on changing the tax structure on this commercial property?
There is no good plan B because it all depends on money. And I don't have a plan B source of money unless a certain person wins the presidency and decides to make massive investments in the community, which could help us because we haven't had that kind of money come in before. But that would be important.
So how would a regular citizen then support you in kind of pushing this commercial tax structure to take some of the pressure off of families?
So we're going to make a proposal to the council. We're going to try to get a change in state legislation that would make it easier. And we're hopeful that enough council members realize if they look at the data like I have, and you see that you have no job growth over 20 years, you ought to wonder why it happened. This is the most frustrating thing to me is everybody talks about Virginia. Nobody wants to say, well, how did they do that? You know how they did it. This is not rocket science. So at some point, the council's got to wrap its head around doing that or elect a council that will. That's another solution.
Hello, my name is Catherine, and I'm here to ask you tonight to please allocate time and resources to complete ER 1722, which would make reforms at the Tower Committee, and also to please fund the Office of the People's Counsel again to give the public an advocate for the public interests in land use.
Yes and yes.
Thank you.
Those are easy.
Hi, good evening. My name is Rachel Breslin. I'm a commissioner with the Human Rights Commission. First, I want to thank you for your leadership. I think that you've really pitched a plan with regards to tax restructuring that is imperative and is one reason why I will be voting against efforts to further restrict your time as our county executive. I suspect it will take time for this work to happen, and it's imperative for us to have leadership that's committed to doing it. I'm also really grateful for the leadership of Director James Stowe, the Director of the Office of Human Rights. I believe his work is at the nexus. His work is at the nexus of two critical things you've talked about tonight, our schools and our young people, and our attempt to attract commercial development, right? And specifically because of the work his office does to make sure through the enforcement of things like sick and paid leave, to make sure that wage theft isn't happening. His office is at the nexus of that work. His office is at the nexus of work, but through specific programs like the Friendship Picnic, the Diversity Camp for young people, that's really about the development of our community, our future, which I believe you're committed to. So I'd really love to just advocate for committed funding. Their funding has been threatened over the years, reduced over the years, perpetually at risk. But I think your forward-leaning view of our county must include work that focuses on making it not only an attractive place for businesses, but an attractive place for us to live. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Mark. My name is Ahmad Damola Williams, and I'm a community advocate. And since nobody mentioned it, I'm going to have to be the person to address the elephant in the room, so sorry. What are you going to do about the police brutality in Montgomery County? Last month, matter of fact, it was earlier this month, I saw a black man experiencing a mental health crisis. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure there's like a CIT bill that's been passed, something about like mental health response team. And so I'm thinking, okay, this man is clearly having a mental health crisis. He's talking to himself, he's really loud, he's crying, he's doing all of these things. I see that the police came, Montgomery County Police came. Mind you, this happened in the Aspen Hill area. And so I noticed that the police, I was waiting for the de-escalation techniques, the special training, you know, that didn't happen. I recorded it, by the way. And I see that the man, he took his shirt off and he threw the shirt at the cop's foot. Now, because his shirt touched the cop's foot, that's considered an assault. And that's all it took for the police to rough him up. I mean, he turned around and he walked away. And the police came, slammed him, face scraped up. And so I'm just wondering, the guy, of course he got arrested, you know, he was put in jail. He got like 3 charges, spitting, kicking, all of that. So what I'm asking you is, what are you doing to address police brutality and mental health with the black community and policing?
So you have the CIT teams, which aren't enough, because for the staffing, the Silver Spring CIT team will be busy with homeless people alone and not do anything else. So we need more staffing there. We've increased it every year now, and we're going to increase it again. The police get training, but if there's a complaint, I think you might be able to file a complaint. There's a process, and it goes through a citizen review board. So Montgomery County now has a citizen review board. People wanted it, you've got it. So if there are complaints, they go to the board, and the board will look at the tapes, and the board can make decisions based on that. So we put in process.
I'm sorry. Does the board have any like authority or power to hold the police accountable, or the board is just the board?
No, they have ability to hold police accountable. It is not toothless. That's why it was a challenge to get it.
And in this response team that you said is slowly growing, can you like invest in it? Who's in charge of helping it grow?
We invested in it. That's why we grew it to the number we've got today, but we're going to grow it again. We know we've got to have multiple teams out of each station.
Thank you.
And we have one addition.
Just to address that, the Police Accountability Board is another area which citizens can actually make complaints. I'm Bishop Walker, I'm the chairman of the Police Accountability Board. You can make complaints at the mocopab.org. You can go on and make a complaint against an officer or officers. Those complaints, of course, are passed to the PAB, Police Accountability Board, and then sent to the local LEAs, whomever they are. And then they in turn must do their internal investigations. Once they're complete, that goes to the Administrative Charging Committee. The Administrative Charging Committee is a committee of 5 citizens like myself who live here in Montgomery County, and we review those investigations and from there determine whether there is a violation of policy, and from there move to what would be the administrative decision or adjudication on said charges if they are found after reviewing the investigations. So again, the PAB is another way where you, a citizen, can make a complaint and oversight for the police department. That is not true. That is not true. I am.
Hey,
Okay.
Excuse me, it's now 8:55, Mr. County Executive.
I'm going to do him, and I'm going to do Reverend Moultrie,
Okay.
because I think he's there for a question.
Good
Or a
evening.
sermon.
Good evening. Thank you very much. This is a little bit of a follow-up on the person that spoke about making Montgomery County an attractive place to live, as well as the processes in hiring people. I do think that we have an opportunity, and I would like to know, what can we do to prevent violence? Not just police brutality, but citizen on citizen. And can we also do something about promoting community cohesion and social development of communities? Because I think that's going to be important. Montgomery County is recognized as a very diverse community, and it's only going to get more so. So what are the tools that are going to help us to cope with our increasing diversity in this climate that we're addressing?
I think one of the things we've done is that the county actually has events, public events, that celebrate lots of different cultures, lots of different activities. And you will increasingly see a more diverse audience going to these different events because there are people curious and want to know about different people's religions, different people's belief systems. So you see some of that going on in the county. I think the schools, from my view, need to take a stronger stand on what's appropriate behavior and what is not, and drawing the line on it in the classroom so the kids learn from an early age what's expected. I taught elementary school, and it was not always a fun experience, and I could never understand why kids did some of the things they did and didn't understand how disruptive it was to everybody else in the classroom. Because it's not just when the one kid acts out that he's not learning or she's not learning, so it's mostly he. But it actually keeps everybody else in the classroom from learning. And we've got to be able to defend all the kids' rights in the classroom to be in an environment where they can learn. And people need to have respect for each other. I had a kid who more than once would walk across the room because he was mad at somebody, over the guy's desk, take the desk and flip it up on him. And you can't do anything about it. As a teacher, I couldn't stop him. I couldn't touch him. I couldn't do anything because I tried to get to the desk first and pin it down so he couldn't flip it up. The teacher shouldn't have to do that. But that means you've got to develop a culture of understanding, tolerance, and respect for people, rather than anything you want to do, you can do. I got nothing to say about it. And taking them off their damn phones would be a really good idea as a starter. There's no reason to allow kids to have a phone out in the classroom unless you actually have no intention of educating that child. Not that I don't have an opinion on it.
I'm Reverend Barry Moultrie, and I'm not going to give you a speech or a sermon. If you will give us a commitment One, to increase the funding for the staffing of the Office of Human Rights. They're under fire. They don't have enough people to do the job. And yet they're going to be lynched by the county council. We need their funding increased, number one. Number two, we need your budget to reflect the priorities of our community. So we have students, we have children that are at risk because of mental health crises and drugs and violence. And we need an enterprise approach to addressing that, to all of those needs, so that we help our children. We just need a commitment from you for your budget to reflect those priorities.
I have tried to fund social programs, as you know, as heavily as I possibly can. At the end of the budget last year, the council I got 12 pages of cuts that were made by the council in a non-public meeting where nobody knows where they voted. These were all social programs. I'm going to go back in and continue to put social programs in that reflect the needs of the community so we can provide with these children what we need. If you've listened to me, particularly on the legal issues in this desire to lock kids up again, we need facilities to treat kids. We don't need facilities to lock them up. We do not need to criminalize the behavior of young people. We need to get them into an environment where you can teach them a different way of doing things. And our current approach is now they're not putting them in jail, but they're also sending them home where the parents say, I have no control over my kid. And then the kid goes out and steals another car the night he's gotten home from jail, and there's nothing you can do. We have got to give ourselves the tools to help these kids and invest in it. And the Office of Human Rights, I actually like the report because whatever it showed in shortcomings shows that it's because the place got de-staffed. And so it gives me a good reason to adjust the report by restoring staffing levels in that department. So I will use that as an excuse to restore staffing levels.
Well, thank you. So the last thing I just want to ask is, in looking at tax restructuring, does the county charter allow for the county to go to like a flat tax rate? You'll have a lot more money to provide the social service programs and all that you need without the cumbersome.
So we've got a flat income tax rate, but it's capped at 3.2%. And so I think we all know that.
Not talking income tax rate.
Which tax?
Of overall flat tax rate.
Everybody
in the county.
No.
The county won't let you.
We're allowed to have an income tax. We're allowed to have a property tax.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
We have
So-
one last question, if that's okay. It'll be quick.
It's Vernon, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Executive. Having served time as an elected official, we have given you a heavy agenda this evening. And you have served one term. There's nowhere in heck that you could take our agenda and complete it or get into it in one more term. On the ballot this year is a question A, which says that they want to limit the county executive term to 2 terms. That's 8 years. If we, and it is now three terms. They pushed one through the last election or
Right.
so. So if we wanted to get executive change, we can go to the poll at any time and vote. You got to learn to vote up or down. So I'm encouraging folks not to vote no on question A on the ballot. And if during the next term, if the county executive does not do right, then we know how to go to the poll. If we don't go to the polls or we're not at the table, then we can't change things. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. County Executive, we have a woman over here who's been patiently waiting in line. Thank you for waiting. If we could have one last question over here.
Thank you, Executive and everyone here. My name is Ebony, and I am with Housing for Justice, although I am in a shelter. And I would like to ask, what is the county doing as far as the shelters in Montgomery County? For an example, Interfaith Works. I know that the county supports Interfaith Works, and the budget also that you guys we're talking about is supported by this the county. And we as residents, I have a few here, even a few back at Crafts Branch, off of Shady Grove Road, behind the Giant, if y'all know who we talk about. We have been there for a while, and are some major concerns that some of them are scared to talk about because they're scared that there's going to be retaliation of being put out or not getting the help that they came there for. Also, and I honestly believe that there needs to be some kind of investigation of making sure that the HIPAA laws are enforced at Interfaith Works, at all their shelters, Progress Place, Taft, and Crafts Branch, as well as investigation with staff mental health, and their the way they treat us and the way they talk to us. There's definitely a lot of women are very weary, and they're trying their best to get the things that they need to get done, but the program is not funding what we need. Because, for an example, I just got hired with the Fort Detrick military base, and I have a fingerprinting on Friday, and the director specifically told me that they can't pay for me to get there to get that fingerprinting. Although me getting this job and doing the necessary steps for this job will help me to get into my apartment, as well as move forward in my life, so I won't be in the shelter or won't, I can be able to help, come back and help someone. So what is the county doing as far as, making sure that this shelter is really beneficial to the those who are homeless and in need of the service?
I think our shelters generally are, but it doesn't mean you're not running into a problem. So what I'd ask you to do is give your name to Barry or one of my staff, and can get you in touch with the person who runs homelessness services, and you can give her a kind of a more detailed view of what's not happening that you think needs to happen or what's happening wrong. Right there.
Mr. County Executive, good evening, everyone. This is also a hybrid meeting. We have some attendees online. We've got several questions.
It's 9 o'clock.
One last question.
Yes,
how will the needs expressed in tonight's forum be translated into the proposed agency budgets submitted to you? What accountability measures are in place to make sure that each agency is asked to show their community engagement work when justifying their budget proposals submitted to you?
I guess each agency discusses where their money's going, and we've got a racial equity office that reviews all the budget proposals. So we've got kind of like the general, like you've got to tell us how you're going to spend the money. We also have a review by our own internal racial justice group to make sure that it has an effect or is being done in a way that's consistent with what we want.
All right. I think that's it. Round of applause for the county exec. Round of applause for yourself. This is not it. Please go meet the agencies, the leaders, take a card, and let's continue to build community together. Also, special shout out to Council Member Kristen Ming. Take care. Have a good night. Peace.
It's been so wonderful for him to help him with his anxiety and his autism.